This is section 11.6 and 2.4. We're going to talk about standard deviation and variance today and how to find them on the calculator. There's a couple of other things as well that we're going to find. Objectives here are to determine the range of the data set, so we're going to find the range. We're going to determine the variance and standard deviation of a data set. Okay, and we're going to have to be able to find these data entries using the calculator. All right, so first thing that we're looking at here is the range. The range is the difference between the maximum and minimum data entries in the set. So in order to find the range, you're going to put the data set in numerical order, smallest to largest, and then you're going to take the biggest entry, subtract it from the smallest entry, and that's your range. Okay, so it's pretty simple. A corporation hired 10 graduates. The starting salaries for each graduate is shown. Find the range of the starting salaries in thousands of dollars. So the first thing we want to do is take this data set and put them in numerical order. So when I put all my data sets in numerical order, I've got 37, 38, 39. I've got a 41 3 times, a 42, a 44, a 45, and a 47. Okay. The reason I put them in numerical order is because it's easiest to figure out which one's the largest, which one's the smallest. So you'll notice 47 is the largest value, 37 is the smallest value. So I'm going to find my range. My range, I take the largest value minus the smallest value, and that is going to be 10. So in this case, the range of the starting salaries covers $10,000. Okay, so the difference between the largest and the smallest is $10,000. That's the range. Okay, now you'll notice on page 2, okay, on page 2 I've got a little blurb here on how to find the standard deviation and the variance. Okay, you're not going to have to find either one of those by hand. You're going to use your calculator to be able to do this, and these are the steps to be able to find that. Okay, I'm not going to cover a lot of this. Again, it's pretty self-explanatory. You're going to need to practice with this at home. Just put some data values in to your list and just play with it a little bit. Okay, so that you can kind of have an idea how to find standard deviation and variance. One thing about the in both of these is that if you look at this here down at letter A, there should be a bar above the X. That's the mean. Okay. And I'll show you an example here coming up. The S and the X here, that's the standard deviation, okay, on your calculator. The other thing is the variance. The variance is not shown on your calculator, okay? You're going to have to find it by taking the standard deviation and squaring it. So a couple things on the standard deviation. You're going to round to 2 decimal places, okay? Every time you find the standard deviation, you're going to round it to 2 decimal places. The variance is then the standard deviation and square it. So you're going to take your standard deviation, round it to the nearest hundredth, 2 decimal places, and then you're going to take that value, square it to get the variance. Okay? Again, the variance is not shown on your calculator. Okay? Okay, now, as you look at this sheet here, I've given you, this is what the calculator screen will look like on your calculator. I've shown you here that as we look at this right here, this value right here is going to be the mean, the X bar, okay? And this value right here is going to be the standard deviation, the S and the X. Okay, so that's where you're going to find those values on your calculator. All right, so let's go through a couple of examples here. Let's take here, and I'm going to add in the calculator part as we go through as well and kind of show you how you're going to calculate these on the calculator. So again, you're going to want to practice and follow along with me as I enter these in. Okay, the one thing is about the calculator, I'll already have the data sets entered in. So you're going to have to know how to enter in the data set to your list, which shouldn't be a problem by now. Okay, so it says, what are the mean, variance, and standard deviation of these values. Okay, so we've got 6.9, 8.7, 7.6, 4.8, and 9.0. Okay, and as you look here, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you this on the calculator, and we're going to make this a little bit larger here and show you on this calculator how we do this here. Okay. Now, on this here, I'm going to hit play on this. You're not going to hear anything, but you'll notice I've already entered in the data into my list 1. Okay. So if you have something in your list 1, you're going to clear that out, and then you're going to enter in these 5 values. So once I've done that with these 5 values, I've entered this in. Okay. You're going to hit the stat key. Okay, and then you're going to come up with this set on your calculator. Okay, you're going to hit the right key, and you're going to go to calculate. Okay, so then you're going to come up with this screen. What we want to use here is we want to use the number 1, which is the one variable statistics. Okay, so on your calculator, your next step here is going to be to hit the enter key. Okay, so you'll see hit the enter, and you'll come up with that on your screen. Okay, as long as there's nothing else entered in on your list, then you'll be able to calculate the variable statistics. So then once you do that, you're going to hit enter, and now you come up with this on your screen. Okay, so again, as you look at this value, okay, and we're going to I'll try and zoom in here a little bit more on this so you can kind of see this here. Okay, you've got a couple of values. First value here that you're going to look at, and that's important, is the X bar value, which that's your mean. So the mean of this data set is 7.4. Okay, the second value you're going to look at is S and X, which is your standard deviation. So your standard deviation is this value. We're going to round that to the nearest hundredth. So in this case, our standard deviation is 1.68 if we round it to the nearest hundredth. Okay, so now let's go ahead and let's write those values down here. So our mean in this case is 7.4. Our standard deviation is 1.68. And now the variance is the standard deviation squared. So I'm going to take the 1.68 and we're going to square it. And if I take 1.68 squared, again, I'm going to round this to the nearest hundredth, 2 decimal places. You end up with 2.82. And again, you're going to have to do that on your calculator. Take 1.68, square it, and that will give you your variance. Okay? So let's take a look here now at the second example. It says, what are the mean, variance, and standard deviation of these values? Okay? So I've got 52, 63, 65, 77, 80, and 82. All right? So as I look at these values now on the calculator, okay, we'll go back up here to the calculator. Again, I've already entered in these into the calculator. As you can see, I've already entered in the values. All right, so now as I look at this video, again, once I've entered in those values, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hit the stat key. Okay, hit the stat key. You're going to go right to calculate. And then, again, you're going to hit enter on number 1, the one variable statistics. And then you're going to hit enter again. And again, now you'll notice that on your calculator here, again, the X bar is your mean. So in this case, again, we're going to round everything to the nearest hundredth, 2 decimal places. So our mean is 69.83. Down here is our standard deviation. Again, we're going to round it to the nearest hundredth, which will be 11.75. Okay, so now we're going to take and let's go ahead and let's write these down here on our problem. So the mean The mean was 69.83. That's the average. The standard deviation is 11.75. And the variance is the standard deviation squared. So if I take 11.75 and I square it, that gives me, again, rounded to the nearest 100th or 2 decimal places, 138.06. So the variance is 138.06. The standard deviation is 11.75. And our average, our mean, is 69.83. Okay? So this is section 2.4. 11.6 talks about standard deviation and mean and variance.